Disassembled, the official podcast of the Big Glasgow comic page, where we talk about news, reviews, and interviews in the world of comic books. I'm your host, Ian Lynn, and as always, I'm joined by lovely Daniel Boyd.
Hello, this is lovely Daniel.
I am, of course, also joined by Massimo Castelli the Machine.
I'm not as much of a machine as Cyborg, but, you know, I try my best.
And somewhat reluctantly, we are joined by Angry Alan.
Hello, fellow kids. Also, I'm not Alan, I'm incognito because, for the sake of my own personal safety, after I tear the...
We're joined by Angry Nala Dot.
Mystery Guest X.
I think that's Alan
That's the
Todd
guy.
backwards. I don't know.
Just start summoning fucking Etrigan.
Close enough, Zatanna.
Just start announcing him like I'm Zatanna over here. Everything backwards. So, we're kind of... we're skipping the norm this week, and we're diving right back into the...
There was a film that came out.
The topic of the week. I mean, we're gonna get right back into it. It happened, boys, after a long, painful gestational period. The Snydercut has been released onto the world. Everyone can shut up on Twitter now, except for they're not going to. We'll get to that.
Yep.
So basically, we're just going to take the entire time today to talk through the Snydercut, Zack Snyder's Justice League, how we feel about it, how much of an aneurysm it gave some of us. Is it good? Is it bad? What's next? And I understand you guys brought some notes. I didn't because my brain's an encyclopedia. Also, I watched this movie no less than 4 times at this point.
Wow.
That is insane.
That's crazy.
Have you slept?
Yes.
Like 2 days?
We've talked about that. I don't sleep.
No, man doesn't sleep.
He is the
I don't do
little
much
Batman.
else either, so... I mean, there's so damn much to talk about with this movie, and it's really hard to talk about this without talking about its kind of older Bizarro clone from 2017.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I watched the 2017 version of Justice League shortly before my first time going through the Zack Snyder cut.
How is that?
Jesus, it's so painfully obvious where they nipped and tucked and cut that movie, and it's the same plot, it's the same overall scaffolding, but
Hold on. Did you say plot?
yeah.
What was the plot of this film?
uh
That's it.
Superman dead,
Something about
make him
end of the
undead,
world.
make him not dead.
I was gonna say I haven't seen the original 2017 Justice League film since it came out in the cinema in 2017.
Same.
And I did not subject myself to watching that film again and lead up to this one. What I did was I paused the film throughout of the bits that I thought were changes and rewatched the clips of Justice League 2017 to see how drastically different
I watched
the film
that.
was.
Yeah, I watched a quick comparison video on YouTube. But Alan, if you're wondering about the plot, have you seen Avengers films? Have you seen how they took like 22, 23 films to get to this amazing climax, built up the villain, sort of had loads of fleshed out characters and lead up, and then it was a really satisfying climax. Well, imagine that, but with none of the stuff I just said, and you have Justice League.
None of the origin films,
That's-
none of the character development.
That sounds more familiar.
Yeah.
3 of the origin films, for
Sorry.
sure.
Are we really counting? Batman vs Superman as an origin film?
I mean, do you know who Batman is?
Yes.
Do you really need to see Batman's origin again? But we did get Man of Steel. We did get Wonder Woman. Here's the thing, all right? Everyone says they rushed to catch up with Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
They really didn't. It's the exact same time frame. Iron Man came out in 2008. Avengers came out in 2012. Man of Steel came out in 2013. Justice League, the Whedon cut, came out in 2017. It's
But
not the time frame.
I think
Correct me if I'm
It's
wrong.
that they sucked at doing it.
I think the main
Correct me.
difference was that Marvel weren't reacting to anything. DC's run at it was reactionary to what Marvel had already done, and I think that is the catalyst for why it's so different and why it failed so hard. Like,
I would say, correct me if I'm wrong as well. In that small space of time you mentioned between the two films, in both cases, Marvel released more films?
Yeah, we got
Two Iron Mans, a Thor, a Captain America.
we got Captain America, Iron Man 2, and Thor, essentially.
And
so
also the
even
Hulk
then,
technically as well.
even then, that's only one more film than we got between
but
Man of Steel and Justice League. It's just
think of the
DC
cohesion.
sucked at what they were doing.
Yeah, think of the
was-
cohesion as opposed to the cohesion in Marvel. And then no, I'm going to say Captain
Ooh.
Marvel, Shazam. There
I was going to
was
say,
no.
Shazam is a great example of, as you said, that the idea of taking something that's a flavour, a completely different flavour from the rest of the DCU, which is what Marvel did really well, of handing off different directors, different films to have different takes on these characters. The thing about
Except Edgar Wright.
yeah, fair enough. that Man film would have been great. The 4 or so films that appear, all of the Avengers make an appearance, even if it's in a limited capacity. Thor appears in Hawkeye, Iron Man 2, there's Black Widow. Technically, if you count the Hulk film, Tony Stark appears in the end of that with General Ross. So you've already got, even though it's in one more film, which is say, four films in capacity 3, you've already got each of these characters set up and appearing,
Yeah.
Yeah.
which is different from...
DC
Also-
never had a Nick Fury.
Also, you don't have Batman having been around for 20 years and Superman being about for 6
Right.
months. Do you know what I mean? That is ridiculous.
Yeah,
It
that's
just makes no sense. They're
something
across the bay from each other.
even as a Zack Snyder apologist to a certain extent. Those are some choices I did have a problem with. Is first of all, Gotham and Metropolis being basically New York and New Jersey, I think is the way they were trying to set it up, being across the bay from each other, which didn't make sense to me. And Batman having been around for 20 years, I could understand maybe if Bruce Wayne had been active for, let's say, 5 years or so before Superman came on the scene.
Yeah.
I would be fine with that. But
That was quite game breaking, I think, going in. Like I was saying earlier in the chat, separately for this, but that's fine if it's a splintered universe. But for the main sort of franchise that they want to grow, it was a horrible decision.
Right. Well, and I mean, and it's okay. It's okay for the characters in the movies to not one-for-one line up with their comic book counterparts. I mean, again, if we're gonna go back to making the Marvel comparison, there's actually a fair amount of differences between some of the characters in the MCU movies and their comic book counterparts. Look at Spider-Man, for example.
Look at Thor, his whole other identity. Was it Blake or whatever the guy's called?
Yeah,
Donald Blake.
That's
Donald Blake.
that's just not. I think it was an Easter egg in the first Thor, and that was it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Even Hawkeye as well. You're talking you take I don't know if Hawkeye was necessarily for the better, because I don't know that if you look at obviously Matt Fraction's Hawkeye run and stuff, and that's an incredible run of comics. And when you adapt comic books into film, you have to make these sacrifices as to what parts of the character really fit within the universe, and that's the misstep that DC made. Is that I think the DC in Batman or Superman Dawn of Justice, or how I'm not even going to say the film again, even though I messed up the pronunciation there, because speaking it, it's going to set me on fire.
I just call it BvS. It's easier.
BvS. They just took the wrong parts of Batman.
But
As you said, I think
I
it was in the
think
chat.
Alan would say that that's because of Zack Snyder's ideologies as a person, rather than. I think everybody interprets these kind of pop culture characters, right? If you're not taking for a specific source, I know that some might stole for Dark Knight Returns, right? But it's not a screen for screen remake like Sin City or something, right? It is taking sort of different aspects. People view these characters differently, and I think the problem with how these characters were treated is it's because it was a vision and it was how Zack Snyder seen them, and whether you like that or hate it is going to determine whether you like or hate movies, 5 movies, however many movies was originally going to span out for this franchise. It's a bit of a polarising early choice to make, I think.
I saw Dan Slott make an interesting comparison on Twitter, where he was talking about, and he did a lot of, so here's the thing, and when we'll get to this also, a lot of comic book creators really like Zack Snyder's Justice League, and whether you want to argue that they are suffering from some sort of Stockholm syndrome, that's fair. But Dan Slott liked some of it, it seemed, but he made an interesting observation. His initial observation is Justice League, the Snyder Cut, works better than the Whedon Cut because it is one singular vision instead of being a Frankenstein mess. But he then went on to say the reason that Zack Snyder's Watchmen adaptation didn't work is because it had the skin of what it was, but it didn't have the spirit. For example, in Zack Snyder's Watchmen, the graphic novel, the violence, first of all, is very limited. There's not that much actual violence in the book, but when there is, it's very brutal, it's very gruesome. It's not supposed to be something you revel in. In the movie, it definitely is. It's very stylized, it's very slick. You enjoy watching it. That's not really keeping to the...
set to a rock soundtrack.
Exactly. Like, it doesn't really keep to the spirit of the book. And you can argue that Snyder was very specifically trying to do something with that movie where Alan Moore was doing a pastiche of superhero comics, Zack Snyder was trying to do a pastiche of superhero movies, as evidenced by, for example, Ozymandias' uniform being redesigned to kind of make fun of the Joel Schumacher Batman suits. But it was it didn't capture the spirit that Alan Moore was going for. On the other hand, flip side, 300 captured the spirit of that book perfectly, because the spirit of 300 is the visuals of 300. What you see is what you get. Yeah. I think that something like 300 is a lot easier for a very visual director like Zack Snyder to translate. Like, there's not that much story in that book. It's mostly cool visuals and violence. Like, that's kind of the point. Unfortunately,
fascism, racism, violence.
As well as Frank Miller can do it, at least.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, not so good with adapting or capturing the point of The Dark Knight Returns, which is clearly what Zack Snyder was trying to go for with BvS. Completely, and I don't hate that movie. I enjoy watching it for whatever reason, but he missed the mark pretty hard with that.
I was just going to say the problem it suffers. The problem it suffers that I feel kind of mirrors in Justice League is that the fact you have to watch an extended edition of the film to understand what is actually going on half the time in the plot.
This is a problem through Zack Snyder's whole career. This isn't the first time it's happened with Zack Snyder, and my whole thing with Batman v Superman, to kind of summarise my review, you can go and read it and decide for yourself what you think. But to sort of summarise, I basically said, right, when this came out, it was a big deal because it was the first time in however many years since these characters were, written, and we started getting decent superhero films, that we're actually going to see two of the biggest characters on the one screen in the same movie. And that alone made it a huge deal. It didn't matter who was making it or who was playing the characters or anything really. Everybody just wanted to see Batman Superman fight. The question becomes, how far does that take you before you go, oh no, this is a shambles? Like, how much goodwill does that buy you before you have to sit back and go, they could have done this better? Like, I know it's great we're getting it, but how much does it actually, how valuable is that really?
Yeah, and that's something I've had
the exact moment they lost me.
Yeah.
Sorry, the exact moment that they lost me was Batman vs Superman, the opening credits, when Martha and Thomas Wayne are murdered. Completely lost me, like, in that stupid scene.
Why is that? What was your objection to that particular take on that scene? Because there have been so many different versions of the Wayne murder.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm glad you asked, and I have no problem with them including that because they've done it in a over the credits, it could be relatively quick. Fair enough. Include the scene if you need to. You don't need to, but it's fine. The reason I had a problem with it is they have the comedian, big what's his chops?
Jeffrey Dean Morgan.
Texan dude. Jeffrey Dean Morgan and
Lauren Cohen.
Lauren Cohen.
His nemesis from The Walking Dead murdered her husband and whatnot.
Yeah.
And rather than Thomas and Martha just being gunned down like by a mugger, he has to include the fact that a bit like from which one of the films was it? Where that's Batman Begins, where Ra's al Ghul is saying to him, "Oh, because your dad wouldn't do anything, and that's why your mum and dad died." Well, in Zack Snyder's version, he has to be a man about it and has to try and save everybody, and so he gets shot, and then rather than just shooting Martha, the gun actually gets stuck up underneath her pearls, and then when the slide comes back when he pulls the trigger to eject the cartridge, that's what snaps the pearls, and it's this big slow-mo stylized moment. So basically she gets shot in the face, which, when she's lying there on the deck, her face is fine, and the pearls go everywhere, and it's Martha, like Rosebud. And I was just completely turned off by the fact that he had to have Thomas Wayne be a macho man about the whole thing rather than just handing over the money because he's a multi-millionaire at the time, billionaire, I don't know. It was just
I agree.
He fucking lost.
Do you know what's funny? I've actually seen more interpretations of the Batman Murder of the Waynes where Thomas Wayne fights back. That's the version I'm most familiar with.
I agree somewhat with what Alan's saying. No, I think Zack Snyder has a problem with like characters just acting like normal people. Like everybody has to be a kind of uber macho hero man, and it was a similar problem. Similar problem in Man of Steel with Jonathan Kent. Like, what was wrong with a heart attack? A heart attack's perfect because it's the one thing that Superman can't stop. He can't do anything about. Whereas a big tornado, and he's like, I'll be the kind of, I don't know, the sacrifice here, and you guys can go. Like, there was no reason for him to die in that film, but the reason to make him die in that way was because Zack Snyder refuses. I don't know if he maybe sees a heart attack as being like a weak death for a character's dad or what, but why change it?
It's unforgivable about Man of Steel for me, because see All-Star Superman for how to make a heart attack death of Jonathan Kent impactful. That is how you make Jonathan Kent dying of a heart attack the most impactful it's ever been in any comic.
Yeah.
Because I know, I think is like in Superman and Lois, which is a new TV show that's came out recently. They show it there. They show a few frames and stuff like that because obviously that's part of his origin. But yeah, like the Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely version shows you how you would be able to do that in a film. The idea of like if you made him die, but he's too far away. He's not fast enough. He can't stop a heartbeat. You can't race in between a heartbeat.
Yeah.
No, that's it exactly. But also, you're kind of comparing from Batman versus Superman. You're comparing David S. Goyer and Christopher Nolan. No, he was Man of Steel, wasn't he? And Zack Snyder with Grant Morrison. And,
but I was going to say
it's a different sport.
I was going to say I bet you Zack Snyder hates All-Star Superman. Like, I bet you he hates All-Star Superman.
I know, I was going to say.
I think he probably likes it, but it's just not dark enough for him. That's his jam, and that's where me and him just totally diverge, and that's why I don't like his films. So it's not him, it's me. Like I know that, and I'm going to stop now. Right? So let someone else kind of have their say.
I think we should probably move on to
the film itself. The actual film? Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, because we've spent the last maybe 20 minutes or so talking about the films that exist around that film, and
but context is important.
Yeah, context is very important.
That's an important part of the conversation ultimately.
Yeah, definitely.
To set up what this film is, and obviously the birth of this film, like I mentioned from the outset, was kind of a long, painful gestation. It was in development in 2016, 2017. Obviously, Zack Snyder had a personal tragedy in the family when his daughter took her own life, and so he had to step away from the project, and Joss Whedon was picked up and kind of unceremoniously stuck on the project.
I'm
Yeah,
right.
not
I'm
a
right.
fan of that either.
I'm right in
We didn't
saying
murder that, man.
in the original cut, it still says directed by Zack Snyder. It doesn't have Joss Whedon's
It
name
does.
mentioned. Is that right?
It has Joss Whedon mentioned in the screenplay, I believe.
Yeah.
It's like Josh Whedon, and it's the guy who done the screenplay for this, who I can't
Right.
remember his name.
Correct, which
Well,
seems
so-
weirdly disingenuous with how much of that movie was rewritten, reshot, entire scenes plucked out. Let's talk about the most overarching general thing about this movie first, the length. With
Yes.
credits, I think the length for me was a little different than you guys because of NTSC versus PAL. I believe for you guys the movie probably clocked in at about 3 hours and 52 minutes with credits. For me it was 4 hours and 2 minutes with credits.
I was 402.
Oh, okay, so it showed up the same.
Oh,
I know
I
in
think
some
yeah.
European countries it came out shorter because there's like a slight difference in the frame rate.
Right.
I think it
That-
might actually. I think mine came in under
Thanks, Brexit.
4. Yeah.
It's a minimal difference, but over the course of 4 hours, it does make up about a 10-minute difference in the overall runtime.
It felt like
Watching-
it lasted forever.
Watching the film, this is not a movie I would see in theaters. I'll say that. I would not have sat through this in a movie theater. I was happy to sit there in the comfort of my living room and kind of take it in and experience what it was. That said, I would be perfectly happy to see the eventual fan edit that cuts it down to a more manageable thing.
Which is entirely reasonable. Like, it could have, in my opinion, you could have shaved maybe an hour and a half off this film.
Absolutely.
But-
the
Easily
entire
shaved, yeah.
the entire first Wonder Woman scene, and this really goes for the 2017 version as well. That entire scene with the terrorists and the bomb and all had absolutely no purpose in the film. There was no reason for it to be there. It didn't add anything to the
It annoyed the
narrative.
hell out of me.
Although I did feel like that one scene in this film, Wonder Woman was more heroic in that scene than
Yeah.
at any point in Wonder Woman 84.
Yeah,
Like
I'm not
that-
seen Wonder Woman 84.
Oh,
which is
I've not
Trash.
seen it either.
It's
yeah.
fucking garbage. And
I-
this scene,
yeah.
this scene, it just it's not a perfect scene, and I agree. It's a bit, the slow mo is a bit self-indulgent, and obviously, as you're saying, in terms of plot, it's quite unnecessary. But just watching it, I'm like, oh my god, this is so much better than any part of Wonder Woman 84. Like,
It even beats
Yeah,
out the
and
2017 version of the scene as well, in my opinion. Like, although it's like longer and stuff, it's more Wonder Woman than anything that appears in that first Justice League film, or the first version
Yeah.
of it, first original.
this
well, and
this scene had the
there's
first F-bomb
one-
as well, which was weird.
there's one really major difference. There's only one really major difference between this version and the 2017 version, and that is that the main leader of the terrorist group fucking dies in this version. Like everything but his
Yeah.
little bowler hat is exploded.
Yeah, he does.
Is it just me, or was that total overkill for that one
Yeah, it was,
guy?
it was.
It absolutely
Like, she
was,
took it
but I
off.
laughed
The
really
whole
hard as his
film
little
is
hat
total
floats
overkill.
down.
I was a big fan of actually the her with the bullets. Like, I felt that was justified slow mo in my opinion. Which he catches. I thought that was. I loved that. That was like,
Okay,
Like-
here's my
Yeah, that was
question.
cool.
yeah, it was cool. Just cool as shit. Like, it just. I forget that.
Why doesn't she have
cool as
super
hell.
speed powers the entire rest of the movie?
She does. I'm pretty sure.
Does she?
Did at
Yeah.
another point. I did notice it at another point towards
Yeah,
the end
she-
when she was
she
fighting in the
does-
sewer. I noticed that. I think.
Yeah, and the sewer she has it, and then also in the end of the film as well, during the final fight, which we'll get to.
But it's definitely
Yeah.
more. It's definitely most noticeable in this scene.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's because it's more. It's I think it's more noticeable since she's fighting off against normal people and not with a bunch of super gods.
Yeah, and yeah, killing the guy did seem pretty overkill because especially if she has those super speed powers, why do her whole bracer? Like, why
That's
not just
not
run
right.
over and tie him up?
Yeah, I did wonder that myself.
Yeah,
Because
same.
it looks cooler.
Exactly.
It's that's the thing. It's not a bad scene overall. It just didn't really have a place in the film. It felt like something they wrote because it's cool and it's Wonder Woman being Wonder Woman and
Yeah.
we want to have it in the movie, but ultimately it doesn't really add anything. And that alone, you cut that out. You cut like what 10, 15 minutes off the runtime.
But at the same
Um,
time, as soon as I don't know about you guys, but as soon as I heard we were getting this version of the film, and all the news about it originally. It was originally going to be like 4 parts, and then it was going to be like one big part and all the rest of it. After watching the Ultimate Cut of Batman v Superman, it was like, well, it's going to be self-indulgent. There's going to be unnecessarily long, extraneous scenes. I wasn't expecting that, so it didn't bother me.
It didn't bother me. I spent the whole time, especially in my subsequent watchings, I spent the whole time thinking, what would I cut from this movie to keep it intact with what it is, not weeding it up, but make it more digestible? And the first thing that came to mind is that scene. That would be the first thing I would excise.
I watched it twice, and personally I didn't
Barry
feel
Allen going for a job interview.
I didn't feel the runtime too much, but how you watched it 4 times, I don't know. That's
Alan would just burn the whole film is what he would cut.
I watched it one time.
You couldn't pay me to watch that film again. You couldn't pay me to watch that film again. I think it is genuinely the worst thing that I've ever seen.
Wow.
Like,
really?
I was gonna say I don't know.
I think it's awful. I think it's absolute garbage.
We should give Alan some recommendations to try and find him something worse than.
Exactly. Give him something try and break him.
Worse films than that, which I've enjoyed because they're funny, bad, but that is just so pretentious and so. I don't recognise any of the characters on screen, and I didn't care what happened to anybody on screen, like, at all. The scene in this one that broke me was Iceland.
Well, do you want to cycle back to the?
Do you
want to cycle back to the opening?
Wonder Woman?
And we can talk about that and talk about how you say that you don't recognise any of these characters, even from the start of the film.
I don't recognise a single person in it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so what was the opening again? Because I'm honestly trying to forget this film.
The opening of this one, this version of the film, the Snyder Cut, picks up immediately after Batman vs Superman, when Superman's killed.
No!
And it's super slow-mo.
Spoilers.
Probably, which is what you hate. But I thought... honestly,
there was slow-mo?
Right, yeah, it's crazy. It's super slow motion, and obviously it cuts into, like, shows, Batman, like, firing the gun that then shoots through Doomsday, and then Superman's, like, scream echoes out. And I personally much prefer this start over the original version, apart from the dodgy Lex Luthor CGI that happens in the middle of the scene that really broke my immersion. No need for that scene, by the way. Could have skipped past that and kept that entire first opening section free of terrible CGI, in my opinion. But I was a big fan of watching, literally, as like, and they explained it in the film, the idea that the mother box will start awakening because Earth's biggest fucking hope and defender, I'm redoing that line, biggest hope and defender, is dead. And personally for me, I thought that was a much more poignant and impactful start to the film.
It provided a lot more context. In the original cut of Justice League from 2017, it was kind of like, here are these boxes here, and here's this dude with some armor, and I guess he wants to find them all, and the Unity Mother. And, like, Steppenwolf was just presented as this generic, storyless,
unthreatening henchman. Like, that was the thing in this movie. I mean, he still was a bit of a henchman with daddy issues, or nephew issues.
Well, that's the thing. In the 2017 version, he's not a henchman at all. They present him as
it's kind of being in charge.
Darkseid entirely.
Yeah, but
the way he looks as well. By the way, sorry,
he felt so much more animalistic in this one, which was. He felt like a physical threat more so than he did in the last one, which I liked. Like that scene where he's chasing the Amazonians and he's just knocking horses down as if they're nothing. It was like, well, this guy is actually like, he is a physical threat. So that was good.
He's kind of
a lanky ass in the first one. This lanky boy.
He got hench. He did get hench.
That armor, by the way, looks really pinchy.
Yeah. Right? How much skin must get caught in that? Yeah.
That's all I could think watching it is, man, that's... It was really... I liked the way the armor kind of undulated and moved with him. I thought that was kind of cool, to be honest, just visually speaking. I thought
Yeah.
that was a neat effect.
Yeah, it was just lots of wee lines, but it all kind of animated together.
Oh,
Looked good.
it was over designed as fuck. I mean, let's
Yeah.
be clear, like unnecessary, like most things in this movie. But it was cool looking, like most things in this movie.
At least it fits the aesthetic, I guess. At least it's consistent.
Yeah. Overblown, overshot.
I liked.
Over here.
I thought Darkseid looked all right. Honestly,
Yeah, I thought he looked good. For
He looked
how
better
he
than he
was
did in the
oriented.
posters, I think. He looked better in action and movement than he did in the still images that I've seen.
Yeah.
yeah. I would have. I mean, don't get me wrong. I would have loved to have seen like classic Tunic.
Mm-hmm. Like blue.
Simplified Darkseid.
Yeah.
This was very much like a new 52 version of
Yeah.
Darkseid, but
Mhm.
it fit the overall aesthetic that they were going for with all the apocalyptic stuff. I get it. It's fine. He looked the part. They didn't do anything
Yeah.
that made him look radically not like Darkseid, which is kind of what I was worried about.
Or just a big generic grey guy like Doomsday. Like,
Yeah. Or any of the films that appear, any villains that
God.
appear. In this
Yeah.
one.
do you want to talk about the Aquaman scene? Because that was pretty much the same,
Which
but
one?
slightly different. The opening scene where he goes to find him. And
I thought
and Alan's got a lot to say about it, I feel like.
I thought it provided lots of context for me personally. Like it actually made sense within the film. One thing for me was in
We're
the
all
original
savages.
cut. In the original cut, when they explain, oh, there's a big snowstorm. So they don't explain that even. And like it made me think, why did Bruce Wayne not just chop her in?
Right.
It's $1 million. And then they explain it's like, oh, this is a snowstorm, so he couldn't get in. He had to ride across the mountains. Okay, that makes sense. Like I just felt like the scene did a lot better of cleaning up some of the questions that I had for the original.
And they
one.
completely, in the 2017 version, did they have any of the... well, they had a little bit, didn't they, of Arthur speaking Icelandic back and forth with the villagers?
Yeah, I think
They
so.
didn't have Bruce though. They didn't have Bruce speaking Icelandic. It's something they didn't have. In
They
the film.
didn't have the weird hymn that came out of nowhere and was felt really out of place.
Jesus.
That was odd.
Yeah,
I'm
weird.
not going to lie to you guys. I kind of missed the I heard you can talk to fish line.
I would say there's some things in this film I do miss.
I did prefer Bruce Wayne surprising Arthur by replying to him in Icelandic versus the
That was great.
"Can you point me to Atlantis" line that they have in the Whedon version.
Mm.
Yeah.
I kind of liked that felt very Bruce Wayne Batman to me. The kind of like, haha, I'm going to pull this one out on you because
Yeah.
I'm smart, with a little smirk.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
I can't figure out, you guys, if I like this movie because I like this movie, or if I like this movie because I see parts of this movie that could be a better thing, and I'm so mad that it's not.
Do you know what we'll do? Right? We'll because obviously we're going to be in this for a wee while, so we'll break it down and we'll rate what this opening section is. It better or worse than the original 2017 thing?
It's better.
Okay.
Completely better.
Yeah, it's better.
What do you think?
I had no idea. Don't remember the 2017 version at all. I remember not being disgusted or upset by it. I remember just thinking it was crap.
So
But
worse.
this one, this scene, this was the point where I was like, nah, fuck this film.
What was your problem with
All
this
the bit in
scene?
the bar.
Yeah, I was going to say this is probably the least controversial
What I
scene in the
really
whole
hate
entire
about it-
film.
What I really
He doesn't
really
like
hate about
manly
it is
Aquaman is his problem.
Was it
that was a problem.
Was
But
it
the
when he
thing
smashed-
that I really hated
when he
about it,
smashed the whiskey bottle?
if you want to know, yeah, bullshit. Like, just what the hell is that? It gave me an insight into how Zack Snyder sees the rest of us. We're either, twee savages who sit around like singing songs about our savior who comes from the ocean to you really help us out, or we're cannon fodder. Like, that seems to be the way that he views the rest of the world, and I can't be doing it. I
See,
just dislike the films that the guy makes.
I
dislike
really
the
feel like
choices
you're
he
reading
makes.
hard into his worldview with that because you want to, but that's just me.
So
No, from the films. I mean, he might be a sound guy. He might be like a really nice guy, and I'm sure he is. But the things that he portrays on screen, I can't be doing with. Like, it's just, it rubs me so far up the wrong way that I just can't take the rest of it in.
so do you think
He's got
that
he's got 6 super gods who are just so far above the rest of us. There's scenes later on where they're talking about Cyborg, and it's, oh, he might be a genius, he might be head of the football team, but his daddy doesn't like him, and it's just like, oh, I'm so sad.
I mean,
And then-
that is a key part of Cyborg's background, though, even in
That's
the
what I'm saying,
comics.
yeah.
I know, I get that, but if you let me continue, we then have a
No.
scene with Bruce Wayne fixing his super fucking troop carrier, and it's oh yeah, the greatest minds at Wayne Tech couldn't fix it, but Bruce Wayne could. Nobody in this film I can give a shit about. Like,
I mean, Bruce Wayne is like a genius level intellect.
nobody needs anybody else.
Bruce Wayne didn't fix the troop
Yeah,
carrier,
I know,
though.
so-
Victor did.
Yeah. And Bruce, like
Yeah,
I feel like in
but
that bit, Bruce gave
At
himself,
this
gave
point,
his
at this
shot.
point, Victor hasn't been there. It's only Diana and Bruce Wayne.
No,
And it's
that's...
just like,
No, they're saying that they want to get it working, but they can't, I think.
Yeah,
And
Victor's
that's
the one
it.
that fixes it. Yeah, Victor's the one that fixes it, like, because he's the
Yeah,
one who hacks
eventually.
the system. Yeah.
yeah, later on. But at this point, like, Bruce Wayne is doing it because the greatest minds in Wayne Tech couldn't do it. It's just like, fuck
Yeah, he's
off,
trying
man.
to, but
Just
he's not
seriously,
succeeding.
fuck off.
I'd say the issue would have been if he'd succeeded and got it working and then it broke and then Cyborg fixed it. Like he doesn't get it working at any point, which I feel like.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. Bruce Wayne is always set up as being one of the smartest men in the world.
Yeah.
I don't see the problem with that.
Yeah, it's the same with Reed Richards and like Marvel
yeah.
characters, so it doesn't. Yeah,
I get what you're saying. I just don't think that
it's a bit
particular
contrived, but
example
it's comic
fits.
books. Yeah.
It's not one thing. It's all of the things. And the twee Icelandic singing at the start, I just went, fuck you.
Okay, the Iceland, the haunted Icelandic lady singing for 2 straight minutes.
I was not a fan. I was waiting for the scene to cut away.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
like,
me too.
yeah,
Cut away,
Aquaman and
like-
Batman are both gone, and they're just
Gone.
lingering.
Like, see if they kept
And then
it.
she's sniffing his jumper. She's sniffing his jumper.
See,
Like, what the hell?
It's so dumb.
It's ridiculous.
that's the thing. See if they cut away and it was over the top of say Aquaman swimming or Bruce like going away. Okay, makes a bit more sense. As you said, it's just 2 full minutes of a group of Icelandic women. One
Yeah.
of them goes forward, sniffs a jumper.
You know what, guys?
We've spoken about them for so long. I'm going to give their names here, right? As good as I can possibly do the Icelandic names here. So we had Augusta Eva Iron's daughter. We had Björk Sigfinn's daughter, and the woman who is credited as being singing Icelandic women rather than just young Icelandic women was Salome Gunnard's daughter. So shout out to them, and I'm glad they got their 2 minutes of fame and whatnot. But my God, it did kill that film for me.
I was
so
gonna,
dead.
I was gonna say the thing about it as well is that you were waiting for it to turn into a colonnade.
Yes.
You're waiting for it to turn into a colonnade, like, oh, I'm sniffing the jumper of my lover kind of thing. Like it was just
Yeah, let me actually wind back what I said earlier. The Wonder Woman scene, not the first thing I would cut from that film. It would be I would cut from that scene much earlier.
Yeah.
the 2-minute Icelandic.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, as soon as Bruce Wayne looks back and there's just ripples where Arthur was, cut, next scene.
Which is what they do in the original. John
think
Wayne's
so, yeah.
Up there.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
I love the idea of Zack Snyder sitting watching that scene going, this needs something else. This needs 2 minutes of Icelandic women singing a random hymn.
So after that, right, we get Jeremy get Bruce going away. Is that what we get? And we get him to meeting up with Alfred. Is that what?
Yeah,
happens?
he goes back to the airstrip
Yeah.
and Alfred meets
Yeah.
him. Yeah.
Which is probably the best part of this film is more Jeremy Irons.
I have.
I'm a big fan.
Their relationships probably is a highlight.
You can't tell me you hate Jeremy Irons, Alfred.
No, come on, that's a great Alfred. That is a
Yeah.
What?
Can't stand it. He's the most passive aggressive person who, if I was Batman and could fight 14 people at once, I would be in jail for murdering Alfred by
That's-
this point.
Have
We
you
watched him
met
for
Alfred?
20
His
years.
entire
Alfred-
thing is
Yeah,
British
and-
sarcasm.
In every single version, in the
Yeah.
like animated series, in the comics, in the games, like even
I
in the
would-
fucking Christopher Nolan Batman films, he's a sarcastic.
I'm
bastard.
much prefer an Alfred that
Yeah.
gives a bit of lip back
Like,
than just the guy that makes the tea.
don't like
Like
this
I've
film.
always preferred that version of the character. The old guy that's just a servant that makes the tea is not interesting. Like a kind of father figure that gives him a bit of lip is far more interesting to me.
Give us the Injustice version that's like the guy who beats the hell out of Superman with the green
I-
pill.
I-
Give us
I
the
did
version
really
of the
like-
former
I
SAS
liked-
member. Like,
I liked the line later on when he introduces everyone to Alfred and is like, "This is Alfred. I work for him." I I feel like it was him not wanting to explain like the actual relationship there, but it made me chuckle.
Yeah, it was nice. It's like another bit of the good humour that was kind of dry in this film rather than the Joss Whedon.
Am I right?
We go and trip on Wonder Woman's boobs with Flash.
Am I right in saying the scene after this is the Zack Snyder cameo? Are we there yet?
The Lois Lane is sad scene. Yeah,
because Lois Lane leaving a cafe with some coffee needs some slow motion in its own music piece. Like, what?
Don't.
That's the
propaganda coming in.
If you want to talk about things I don't like in this movie, literally anytime Lois Lane's on screen, literally anytime.
I like Amy Adams. I hate her Lois Lane.
Yes, that's exactly it. I don't mind Amy Adams. However, Lois Lane as a character, I expect to have some amount of like snappy sass to her, you know, like a sharpness.
Yeah.
I feel like
She's
Amy
so
Adams
bland.
is too saccharine. Like even once they're together, Lois Lane still gives Clark shit all the time. We never see that in these movies. They just make doe eyes at each other anytime they're on screen.
What I would have done was, see when he came back and they ended up at the farm, I would have loved if Lois just slapped him.
Yeah.
Like, straight up, just smacked him across the face like that. You son of a bitch. You... And then broke down, or like started crying, that kind of thing. That way of like being you when you're really angry with someone but you're so glad to see them. Because you're so glad that something wrong hasn't happened. Like, that would have been the way to redeem that character. Is, as you said, by making her the sassy reporter who... You know,
I don't think Zack Snyder knows how to do romance on screen.
Well, I feel like the whole, like, the fact that she's not worked at the Weekly Planet, or the Daily Planet, since Superman's death, it makes her pretty weak and pretty subservient and pretty
Yes.
shallow.
Agreed. And actually, that's something that is different in the Whedon version. The entire Martha scene, which, by the way, we'll get to the Martha scene and the twist there. Wait for it. The entire Martha scene in the 2017 version is different. They actually meet at the Daily Planet, and Lois is still recovering from the trauma, but she's working. She's just doing puff pieces because she's not ready to get back out there, which I think is fair.
Yeah.
like, you wouldn't sacrifice your
Joss
job.
Whedon's that feminist.
I mean,
So let's not talk about that. Let's talk.
whatever your problems with Zack Snyder are, Joss Whedon, legitimate problems there.
Yeah, there is.
It's a bad day when Joss Whedon. It's a bad day when Joss Whedon writes a female character better than Zack Snyder.
Man, Cyborg, man, that's all I have to say. Yeah.
The Martha scene, though, in the Zack Snyder Justice League version, so, like, that definitely wasn't originally supposed to be John Jones, right? Like, obviously, they did that after the fact because they wanted to shoehorn Martian Manhunter in.
I think they wanted to actually, from what I read, they wanted to do spoilers for the end, by the way, right? When obviously Martian Manhunter shows up again, they originally
wanted it to be Jon Stewart.
They wanted to do Green Lantern, Jon Stewart, but the studio fought them on it, so I think that's why they did Martian Manhunter, and then they went back and retroactively added him into this scene to make it to give it context. I think.
Which was,
I mean, you could have put him at any point where there was danger in the film, and had like a character with like red eyes glow and like save some people, like kind of thing. Like, you could have had
That
him
would
like
involve
that. Like,
having a superhero in this film, though, like, rather than just some god who does things because they want to. There are no superheroes in this film, and John Jones being like Superman level powers and letting everybody else do the work for 4 hours.
I did make me wonder,
That
where
is
were you when
definitely-
Zod was written down Metropolis? Like, what were you doing?
that's something I can agree with, and it's obviously a product of it being an 11th hour decision.
yeah, kind of end game kind of thing,
Yeah,
kind of
the whole
blast.
film is a product of it being an 11th hour decision, and it's just an abomination because of it. So,
Right, well-
you guys like it, I know that.
Alan
No, I
doesn't
don't-
like
I
the
don't-
film, and hopefully he'll have like something different to say at some point in the next hour.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Doubtful.
I'm just gonna take that and loop it throughout the entire podcast. It's just a clip of you saying this film is an abomination. Like, you don't even need to say anything for the rest of the time. You just hang out there in your sunglasses and your beard.
Fun drinking game for the audience. Drink every time Alan says something negative about this film.
I told him I'm gonna edit it so that I'm going to take all of his words. I'm going to edit them out of context. So when it's done, at the very end, he's going to be like,
Zack Snyder version.
I love this film. Zack Snyder is my daddy.
Or Zaddy.
Oh, no.
Zaddy.
We don't talk about that.
We don't talk about that. So, obviously, we have, like, Lois Lane in recovery. And then we have, Batman, was it flying? So that's when the Wonder Woman scene comes in, right? Because
Yeah,
we've already talked about
which we already talked about that.
And all I'd say probably on extra to add on top of that conversation would be I love the score.
Yeah, the score's
with
makes
one
a big
exception.
difference.
I got real tired of ancient lamentation music. I don't know if you guys watched it with subtitles. Every time Amazons or Wonder Woman were on screen, they added that god-awful yodeling to the Wonder Woman theme. And the subtitles described it as ancient lamentation music.
Yeah, I didn't have the subtitles on, so I didn't see.
Yeah, that's what it was described as.
Yeah, that was annoying.
Conan with the
That's the only part I didn't like about the score, honestly.
It was so loud, by the way, as well. Like, it felt as if it would be bass boosted. Like, it was louder than everything else that was going on.
The Wonder Woman scene was the first scene that I kind of really noticed the aspect ratio. Like, I was watching it on my projector, so the start didn't really bother me, and there was a few quieter scenes, but that was the first kind of action scene where I was like, oh, this is cutting off a fair amount, and this is quite, I don't know, like, in terms of filming this, why would you put that strain on yourself, like, to make it look like this? Why not?
It was the wrong choice.
Yeah, just weird.
I got used to that pretty quickly. I definitely think in the case of the inevitable eventual fan edit, someone will cut it down to the widescreen. Because they didn't cut anything off the sides. They just didn't. Like, if you compare it to the Joss Whedon version, it's the full frame. That's the thing, is it's not cut down to the widescreen.
Right.
Yeah.
So
So
I'm
what, is
sure
it just
someone will
expanded
come
that way?
along and,
Like,
yeah.
right.
Someone will come along and
yeah.
do that edit, I'm very sure. And honestly, like, I get that it was to capture his full vision or whatever. I didn't see any scenes in that movie where we benefited a huge amount from the extra inch on each side.
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing I can think of is the final fight. That's about it. Is really the only bit where I'd say there was any sort of benefit.
Maybe, yeah.
And even then, it was minimal.
Apparently, we're also getting a black and white version.
Scrolling through my phone for the final fight. Like, that's how interested I was, sorry.
Even the last bit?
Final fight, like...
Even the last bit of the
The whole
fight.
thing was garbage. Yeah, it's terrible.
The
special effects, and it's that whole shaky camera. I can't tell what's going on. It's garbage.
Are you sure you were watching a wrong version of the film? Because I don't remember that.
I don't remember shaky cam,
cam.
no.
Yeah, were you having a stroke midway?
Were you watching like a porn movie?
I don't feel like that final fight was any different from anything you'd get in the third act of an Avengers film.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it was. I think the
Don't
final
really like
2
them
hours
either,
of
though. I don't really like them either.
the final 2 hours of
I like
this film.
superhero films, but when it's just punching and laser beams flying everywhere, I'm just like, I was more interested when there was folk talking and stuff. It was better.
I mean, the final 2 hours
There
of this
just seemed to
film.
be too much
I feel
rubbish
like
accent. Sorry.
it's fine. It's the final 2 hours of this film. I feel like are the best parts of it. Like, I will say, like, the last, like, of course there's bits obviously that are need, like, if they'd split it into half as what they were probably originally going to do, whereas they would split it to 2 films or whatever,
Right.
or split it into a 4-hour miniseries, like, it feels like in like a TV show where, like, the first 2 episodes of a 4-episode miniseries are really slow burns, and then everything kicks into gear in the second half.
Yeah.
Because for me, the most memorable scenes of the film, aside from the opening, come in that last 2 hours.
Sorry, I know we've moved on, but I was just going to say about the Martian Manhunter scene. That was a deep cut. I mean, when we were watching it, my other half, she's not that up to date with her comic books, and she was like, "Who the fuck is this guy? Like, where has he came from? And why is Superman's mum turning into a green alien? Like, unless you're clued in, that makes no sense, like, whatsoever. There's no setup. There's nothing. And I know that this is the type of film it is because of the fan hype behind it and the campaign and blah blah. This is a film for the geeks. It's for the hardcore folk.
Definitely.
But at the same time, there is going to be people that just watch this that just buy a HBO Max subscription. And I really watched it going, who is this guy? Like,
Exactly.
you need to give it back context. You need to set it up somewhat, right?
Even at the end, where they could have had that, like, they could have had, like, I've been watching for a while, or that kind of thing, or like kind of exposition.
I mean,
Yeah.
it did make some. Once you got to the end and he kind of explains who he is, I suppose it kind of makes a bit more sense. But to expect an audience to wait 3+ hours to figure out who that green guy was that they seen 3 years ago is a bit of an ask. Like,
Yeah, I think they could have had him show, like, since he wasn't doing anything anyways, they could have just had him show up in that end scene and fine.
I mean,
Why
I would have had him be the one who liaisoned with Silas Stone and Joe Robert to Ryan Chow as like a military thing,
Yeah.
because he's a general.
yeah.
Well,
I would have had him be the liaison, like all this stuff's happened.
yeah.
Could you, and you know, like that would make more sense.
yeah.
As his role in the film. I know obviously they basically cobbled together the film because we're in the middle of COVID and they couldn't shoot any new scenes because
budget,
I don't think
I mean,
yeah,
yeah.
budget and stuff. But if even in the original version, if they had done that, it would just have made so much more difference to, as you said, the fact that fans would at least be established with this character a little bit more before revealing he's a giant green alien from Mars.
Yeah. Does the movie move on to Barry or does it move on to Vic?
I think we get
Can't-
Flash next, right?
I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
it's Barry next.
Yeah, we do.
Get Barry, yeah.
Another scene that I can absolutely see why they excised from the Whedon version.
This caused a shitstorm on Twitter, by the way.
It-
We'll talk about it.
What, because of
Yeah,
the real life
people-
clip
Because it's so
of...
creepy, or
No? Because of the Ezra Miller scandal? No.
No. I'll let Ian finish as to what the scene actually was, and then we'll.
No, I know why.
Yeah.
That scene just doesn't really add anything. I mean, theoretically, it introduces Iris West, but she never even gets named. If you don't already know who that's supposed to be, she's just some chick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like-
People really had a big problem with Ezra Miller caressing her face, which is completely justifiable.
Right.
Yeah, that was weird.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is
People-
weird.
people-
Yeah, I did think that at the time.
Like, I was on Twitter and people were like, watching the Flash in this film is making me violently uncomfortable.
She was
Yeah.
also basically, like, undressing him with her eyes as she was walking by. The entire thing was weird.
Yeah, it's a weird, like if it made sense of, like, oh, hi, Iris.
Yeah. If
Like,
they
honestly,
established
you
some
just
sort
put-
of previous relationship between the two, like they knew each other from, I don't know, maybe
High
they
school.
both go to school together or something,
Yeah.
since we've established that Barry's trying to pay for a criminal justice degree, maybe she's in the journalism program and they've worked
It's
together on a
literally-
project.
It's literally 3 lines. It would be, hi, Iris, how are you?
But
Or, like, bump it. Like, it would have made so much more.
Two line. What's the third line?
Oh,
What's your third line?
her responding is more what I meant. Like,
Okay, good.
you know what I mean? You know what I mean?
The hot dog, though, guys.
oh yeah,
The hot
yeah.
dog.
Yeah, fucked it.
God.
I somewhat want to circle back to what Alan was saying earlier about Zack Snyder's lack of understanding or lack of scope in terms of some characters. I think this version of the Flash is already very much a basement dwelling nerd, and
Yeah.
I think I wonder if somewhat the idea that someone like that has their own like kind of wee secret setup and is super smart and is kind of like a bit awkward, the fact that he could have a relationship with a woman is maybe a bit too much of a stretch for Zack Snyder, which is why he was like, oh, this is the scene where like he uses his powers to get the girl because he's too much of an awkward nerd. I don't know, I feel
Except
like
he ran away.
I feel like that's really limiting the character and yeah.
I like.
Oh,
I'm very conflicted about Barry Allen in this movie because I like some of the things that they have Barry Allen do, but I don't like the
Same.
way they portray him as a character.
I hate this
Does
Does that
version
make
of him.
sense?
I hate it.
like, I like the idea of Barry Allen being slightly neurotic.
I mean,
Being a bit scatterbrained. The idea his neurons are firing so quickly
yeah,
in his
that's
brain.
fine.
That's fine, but they go to such extremes with this in this film that I feel like it's almost like, as Alan said, which I know I'm agreeing with you on something, Alan, which hell might freeze over.
I mean, I agree with Alan on a lot of stuff. I just feel like
no,
I have
I'm
to
the
challenge
same.
him sometimes.
Yeah, it's very true. I know I the same as well, but just in terms of what you mentioned about kind of cannon fodder and people being characters, I feel like they mess up Barry's character in that respect of being he's too neurotic
Yeah.
and he's too much his dad.
Yeah, it really reduces
At
the
least-
character, I think.
At least in this version of the movie, he actually does something. I really.
Oh,
Speaking of things I don't like about the Whedon version, they
Just say
neuter
one.
the Flash in the Whedon version. I've never done battle. I just push people and run away.
in this version, common sense.
He's at
fails
least
with the Flash,
competent to
yeah.
a certain extent in this version. He has skill. he can do things. He has some agency.
I mean,
Some, not a lot.
I find Ezra Miller insufferable in everything he's in. So
Agreed.
I hate this version of the character, and I also
I've
hate.
not seen him in a lot, to be honest.
I also hate the fact that he's just totally reduced to the new guy. Like they kind of done the same thing with Peter Parker in the Avengers films, but it worked because it allowed us to get a young Peter Parker without, like we were saying earlier, having to show the origin again. Whereas here we just get the new kid that's kind of been taken under Batman's wing for no real reason. Like he's just found him and he's just went to his gaff and threw a batarang at him and all of a sudden, I'm your new dad. Like what?
I think it actually comes from the scene in Batman vs Superman, because assumably Bruce having that creepy vision and he looks at someone, he's like, that suit looks kind of familiar, or like whatever. Like I feel like maybe that's what they kind of try and insinuate, don't directly state, but it's like
that's always something, both in this cut and the original cut, that's something that I've always thought is a pure glaring issue. But we were saying earlier, right, what Alan was saying about Batman being the smartest guy and one of the smartest guys in comics. How does he not recognise him? Like he has a beard and a bit of a different suit.
Well, and they
mentioned it
say,
hold on a minute.
Movie, he's like, Barry Allen stood right there and appeared to me and said a thing.
They do actually. Yeah, okay, so they did kind of fix it.
I think, which actually probably makes more sense to the point you made about him being like brought under Bruce Wayne's wing kind of thing, because he knows that he has to keep Barry alive.
Yeah, I mean, talk about, we were saying earlier about how Martian Manhunter was pure out of nowhere. I suppose that was the same thing in BvS when Flash showed up with that vision that was so out of nowhere, and there was no setup, and even folk like me that know comics was like, what is this? Why is this included? What?
Well, it didn't help that they had him in some weird freaking future suit that looked nothing like the Flash's costume. So you're like, I don't understand. It'd be different if he like appeared and he was on the cosmic treadmill, and you're like, oh, I know that.
Yeah.
But
Zack Snyder just includes some weird things, like.
Yeah, and see, I got very used to. Up until the most like recent season, I watched all of the CW Flash TV show, which has its own myriad of problems. But I got very used to the Grant Gustin version of Barry Allen, who is not entirely similar to his comic book counterpart, but much closer than Ezra Miller will ever be.
That version of the Ezra Miller version shows up in the TV show.
Yeah, briefly in Crisis on Infinite Earths.
And the idea that's insinuated is that he gets his name from that version of Barry Allen,
which I thought was kind of funny.
Yeah, it was hard, but like you think of the implications for that, like oh yeah, where'd you get your name?
Me.
Some just dude, me.
I met myself from an alternate world, and I guess he was more creative than me, so he already thought of a name, and so now that's my name too.
But they also
John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt.
Yeah, they also insinuated as well through that episode that version of the Justice League got wiped out in Crisis.
Yeah.
Straight up. Like that, the Warner Brothers universe has got straight up wiped.
Yeah.
Also, another note I have on the Flash scene is, as if Zack Snyder needed another excuse for slow-mo, we introduce a character that can move faster than the speed of light. As if we needed to give him another reason to do slow-mo. Like, come on.
Right. Yeah. I was a big fan of the window breaking scene. I liked that. It was just that particular bit.
Yeah.
Just breaking the window with a touch was cool.
Yeah, it was cool looking. There was a lot of cool looking stuff in this movie.
What did you...
It's the one time I've seen in a film where folk don't look at the road and there's consequences.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, folk are having an entire conversation, looking at each other, driving, and I'm sitting watching it with the fear, like actually going, look at the road.
Yeah, that was.
It happens twice.
That was so ham-fisted. Like the guy reaching down for his hamburger. You're about to come up to a stoplight. Just wait until you stop at the red light. Reach down and get your burger, man.
I mean, like as Alan was saying, like the idea of like that happening where like two people talk and has consequences happens again with Cyborg.
Yes, it does.
Talking to his mum and just get fucking. It happens to you twice in the same film.
I think, did we skip over the Aquaman scene? Or is that next?
Is also upset by this.
Like Cyborg's what did you say, Dan? I'm sorry.
I've just seen. Have we touched on the Aquaman scene yet with Willem Dafoe? Have we passed that already, or is that next?
We'll get there.
Okay.
I think
that's right before. That whole thing is right before they fight Steppenwolf for the first time.
Oh really? After Cyborg?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because you get the Cyborg scene, which I was a big fan of after the Barry one. I loved it. I thought it was great. I thought it was probably one of the best introductions to a character in the whole entire film. I know, Alan, you said earlier you're not a big fan of mopey teen, genius teen with daddy issues.
That is the character. That is the character. I know that, right? Like, I've read Teen Titans and whatnot. Like, I love the character of Cyborg. I just don't necessarily see why he has to be such or so unlikable. I was going to call him a dick, but you know, he's at every point in that film, he was just like, he showed up and he was like, "Fuck the world" or something, and I was like, okay, edgy teenager guy. Like, I don't really,
but like
give a
that's
shit anymore. Like,
that's the arc in his movie, though. Is he starts out very self-pitying and, in his exact words, "fuck the world," and then at the very end, you have him being like, "No, like the world's worth saving, man."
I actually noted that he reminded me of Quasimodo. When he was hiding in his tower with his cloak on, he was like Quasimodo.
Yeah.
Disney film.
I think that was. I feel like that's intentional. I also feel like that was them saving money on CGI in a lot of ways.
Aye. Because the CGI was ropey onto it.
The Cyborg CGI was kind of dire.
Very cartoony, yeah.
oh, terrible. It's terrible, and that's probably another reason why I couldn't be bothered with him, because every time he came on screen, I was just like, looks awful.
He
Sounds
looked
awful,
like
he's gonna go a long way. That's a Kit Kat.
he looks like a really kind of bad version of the Michael Bay Transformers.
Yeah, I know what you
He
mean.
looked like a Cylon from the most recent Battlestar Galactica. Like,
He looked like he was made
And
of
not as
crumpled up
good.
tinfoil.
Something that I also noted, I didn't know whether it was fair to keep comparing us to like Marvel, but I wrote down that also, I mean, I think it is fair because Cyborg is somewhat similar to Vision. Like, the way that Vision's getting Infinity Stone, the seeds Cyborg's made for the Mother Box. So he's inherently tied to this, like, MacGuffin, this plot device. And following WandaVision, which was a TV show, to, like, this is technically a movie, the CGI, after seeing the CGI they done with, the work they done with Paul Bettany and that, to then see this, it's just such a step down visually, I think.
Yeah,
In my opinion.
yeah, it was a noticeable difference.
The scene where he was narrating and he was going through like the vision type thing and he was like seeing all this stuff, that reminded me of the Dr. Manhattan scene for Watchmen somewhat, like the kind of landscape he was in and the wandering aspect of it and the kind of ominous score, and I don't know, it put me back to the Manhattan scene in Watchmen.
Yeah, kind of similar. But yeah, I didn't hate everything they did with Cyborg. I definitely think he got a fairer shake than he did in the Whedon version, for sure, one way or another.
Yeah.
yeah, certainly more of him. Like, he got more stuff to do.
I mean, he had a story in this version, is really what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the Whedon version, he is fully a plot device, more or less.
And I think that was, unfortunately, Josh Whedon's entire fault, because, you know, stuff came out with around Ray Fisher.
Yeah.
But him being
Yeah.
very racist and stuff like that, and there's a bunch of, like, very disconsiderate towards him.
Yeah.
And there was lots of stuff implied. And I feel like that was just so, like, because see if that, like, Justice League 2017, if that had that whole Cyborg sequence in it, would have probably just been a better film.
Immediately.
In my opinion, yeah, immediately. Just because we have exploit, because like, I get obviously the whole Flash thing. Like, we even get obviously we get an extended version in this, which you could technically cut out and you would be fine. But if they'd literally just added that Cyborg thing, which is maybe what 10, 15 minutes, and he's a major plot device in this film, and it makes sense. A lot of the failings of a lot of other cut of the film because they took out a lot of the stuff that Cyborg does that's important.
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally.
Just unfortunate,
Well,
to be honest.
So yeah, I mean, they definitely handled Cyborg better than the 2017 film. Whether or not they like how they handled him, he was handled one way or another.
Yeah.
So at that point, I mean, you kind of have everyone get together. You've got most of the team assembled at this point. I guess it's 3 of them. And at this point, we kind of the next big set piece, I'd say. I don't know if we need to go scene by scene necessarily going through the rest of the movie. We're already at about an hour.
We'll be here forever.
But we can go through kind of the set pieces and all that. So the next major set piece is when they go to rescue the Star Lab scientists from the sewers under Stryker's Island in that bay that connects Gotham and Metropolis, apparently. Before that, we get to see James Gordon, which I am so sad we don't get to see more of J.K. Simmons, Commissioner Gordon. I actually really like that casting, and I wish we got more of that.
Brief.
Again,
It's so brief.
again, another phenomenal scene. A few set scenes that was cut out of the original cut for some reason. Again, like scenes that provide great context and actually made sense, because people, like when they show obviously that picture, like the guy has the sketch and it looks like Batman.
Okay, that's in the 2017 version.
Yeah.
Here's the
And it
unnecessary
doesn't-
change.
yeah.
He's missing the ears in the sketch.
Right. Didn't even notice
I
that.
think because maybe is that because they cut out the J.K. Simmons scene, so then that doesn't make any sense. That whole
No, they
Like, 'cause
have the
the-
scene with him walking through
Okay.
GCPD with Crispus Allen, who they don't name in the 2017 version. They have that whole scene, and it's just the sketch that he hands him when they're like, oh, 20 years in Gotham, you think he's going to go kidnap people from... Same scene, the sketch is different. It doesn't look
Really?
like a silhouette of Batman.
Oh.
It's the same, like, it's a silhouette with the cape and all that, but it doesn't have the ears. But all the rest of it's the same, and I don't get it. But yeah, then we have them meeting on the roof. They meet Gordon. I don't understand how Wonder Woman, Batman, and Cyborg all disappear without Barry Allen noticing.
Yeah.
I feel like
for the fastest man alive, huh?
yeah, I feel like that was there just for the giggles of it.
Yeah.
Again, showing the new kid thing. I've been like, oh, I don't get how this works yet.
Honestly, I thought
If anyone was going to disappear, surely it should have been Flash.
right.
Yeah.
Well, and I, honest to God, I thought that they really do just disappear. That's rude. And also that's your bat signal. It's your thing. I would have sworn on the grave of my forefathers that those were Whedon rewrites. I was really surprised they weren't. They had that same
Again-
level of like, oh, haha, what a joke.
Again, I feel like it's
Yeah.
it's Zack Snyder's thing of, okay, I need something light in this film. Let's take this Flash and make him the light bit of the film and have him with all the stupid kind of kiddie jokes or whatever kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. So we have them going down to the sewer. The biggest difference here I mentioned before is the way they treat the Flash. Instead of him needing a pep talk from Bruce and being like, I don't really do battle, I just push people and run away. He just does his thing. He doesn't need a pep talk. I appreciate that. He just reacts, which is better than what they did with him in the 2017 version. Otherwise, I mean, it's a fight scene. Do you guys have much to say about it? Because I don't really.
No.
I think I've got a few things of like I think we could have already covered. Like they removed the scene where the Flash trips and falls into Wonder Woman's breasts,
Yeah.
which was really awkward, and Gal Gadot refused to do that scene, and it was a stunt double, and rightly so, and it's just so
So
weird.
much
It's
effort
fucking-
to have such a bad scene.
and they took out the stupid thing
Yeah.
where Flash like blitzes through a parademon and gets covered in blood, and
Oh yeah.
and that's like, okay, that's that, you know, it's a decent removal. I think as well the interrogation of Silas Stone as well
Yes.
is kind of important and makes sense now in the film. I know, Alan, you obviously hate this film anyway, but you have to admit that this bit at least clarifies something, at least makes some of it make sense.
I don't remember the 2017 version at all. Like, I remember tiny little bits from it. I don't remember the plot. I don't remember where it started and where it progressed to. I don't remember any of this. I don't remember Silas being in most of that film, I'll be honest with you.
It wasn't. That's the thing. There's a lot of scenes that have him in it that are.
Which is good, because
like
that guy's a
Yeah,
brilliant
I mean-
actor.
Yeah, it's a good actor. Yeah.
Yeah, good actor. But for me, this entire thing was unnecessary. Like, I wish it would just die.
I think other than that, the big thing that leads off of this fight, like after that, is that where we discover the whole anti-life equations thing? When Stephen turns to decide.
Shortly
Is that later?
after. This is also where Aquaman finally joins up with everyone for the first time. He shows up to keep everyone from friggin' drowning in a tunnel like a bunch of rats. So there's that. The Aquaman scene.
Oh,
Yeah, but
second.
the Trident and stuff, and Willem Dafoe, and Yeah. What?
Not
Listen.
really a trident, it's 4-pronged.
Yeah, or whatever. Why did they do the weird top bubbles again? I thought we got over that. Like, I thought we fixed that. I thought James Wan sorted that in the Aquaman film. Why did they have these dumb bubbles that they all talk in? Like, how annoying would that be in practical terms if you were an Atlantean? Every time you want to speak to somebody, hold on. I take the bins out tonight, right, cool. Like,
The
why would you
answer
do
is
that?
because they already filmed it and did the CGI is why they still have
Honestly, it's just
Yeah.
it's awkward and weird.
Does have a later on that's a cool mechanic that kind of comes into play with the whole meta scene. That was kind of cool with how they do the air bubbles there.
That's true. 'Cause
I hate the air bubbles.
She uses it in a practical sense in combat, but you could argue that that's just because that's what Mira's power set is.
That's her powers, yeah.
Yeah.
But
Also,
I know what I know
what-
what Alan's problem with this scene is if he wants to expunge on it a little bit.
Was it the accent?
I mean, I just remember not liking anything about any of this. So specific moments, I just remember it was like, did we need to have another scene where they were like, you're Aragorn, please take up your mantle as the king and lead us and blah blah blah. Also trident, 5 prongs or whatever. It's like
I mean, yeah, there's that. This is
layering over the background.
I mean, this is the first scene we really get the whole
King of Atlantis.
yeah. And
The
this could have
Leopard
been honestly if this had been the only scene where they kind of do some expository stuff on that would have been fine. Plus, that would have been less Amber Heard in this film, which I'm fine with.
Yeah.
Listen to the accent.
Did they
Yeah, less of
redub
that.
her?
I think so.
It felt like it, right?
Must
It
have.
felt like
Did she? Hang. You
must
guys
have,
keep
right?
talking. I have to check something.
It wasn't as
they must
it
have.
wasn't as
yeah.
egregious in the original cut. Like, I didn't notice it
Yeah.
to the same extent.
It felt like a redub, and I think that could have been because obviously most of those scenes are CGI.
Yeah.
Heavily related. So it could have been that they just redubbed it in post when they were fixing all the CGI for that.
But I think this should all, like we were saying how did we really, as Alan was saying, and I agree, like did we really include this scene about him again shunning the throne and all that. But
Yeah, it was a weird
but I
one.
think it's easy to forget that it's because of the schedule, the sort of release slate of this film. This is before Aquaman, but Aquaman
Yeah.
came out 3 years ago, so it's like we've seen it all and we know the thing with his brother, and we've all seen that and sat
Like,
through
if
that.
you watch
So
it,
it
if you
feels
watch it with a
redundant.
retrospective lens,
It feels redundant.
then it makes sense, as you said, Dan. But like, if you don't and you watch it from a modern view, it's like, yeah, we already all know this
Yeah.
stuff, and we know. And the weird thing about it is, like, I think if they're gonna have William Dafoe in the film, they could have utilised him better.
Oh yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It could have been less about taking up the throne and more, we know something's coming. I probably think I would have rather had him be that kind of thing, rather be him instead of like.
I think that's the thing as
You
well,
must
man.
take up
Like,
the throne and stuff.
just kind of more generally, see when you look at the cast for this film, the amount of names is insane, and the amount of talent involved is crazy. Like Willem Dafoe, Jeremy Irons, like just there's so many names that you're like,
Yeah.
these are all top tier actors, thespians that have been doing this for years, and this feels like so much wasted potential. Like I don't know, it just imagine how much you could actually do with this talent, and it just feels pissed up the wall.
See what you're saying there? See what you're saying there about wasted talent? How many people in this were there just for the exposition dump? How many scenes where we just had someone giving us like some big, soliloquy or whatever of just like, yeah, right, we get it. He's the king of Atlantis. Or Wonder Woman giving us the whole story. We're going to get to it obviously, but like how this happened. Was it 5,000 years before, and giving us I stink here. It was just a lot of folk telling me a lot of stuff, and I was just like, yeah, you didn't need most of this. You didn't need Willem Dafoe to show up and go, but we need you to take up the mantle, Arthur.
Yeah, totally.
Yes.
Two things.
That was
So
literally a bit mishy.
I just looked up the Aquaman scene on YouTube, and first of all, no, Amber Heard did not have an accent in the original version. Second thing is, in the original 2017 version, we go straight from Arthur rescuing the fisherman to going down to Atlantis, and then Steppenwolf taking the box, and then him talking to Mira. That's just all one that's all a scene, as opposed to in this version where he saves the fisherman, he goes down to Atlantis, he talks to Volko, he goes off, he joins up with the Justice League. Later on, he goes back to Atlantis, and then Steppenwolf steals the box, and like that could have been streamlined.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
Again, like as I say, there's so much you cut out of this film to make it less than 4 hours and make it 2.5, maybe 2. I think Dan, you sent something to chat that we were all in, and it was the funny. It was the funny thing about how there's that meme of Zack Snyder and Henry Cavill, and it's like you promised the fans we've only got like 2 hours and 26 minutes footage. You promised the fans 4 hours. How much unnecessary slow-mo can we get away with? There's no legal limit on it.
Right.
Like, there is so much that can be cut.
I feel like the plot device of like this kind of box hunt that Steppenwolf is on already feels like a video game fetch quest that goes on too long. and I mean, in this movie, which is already 4 hours long, it drags it out more, I think, somewhat.
At least we had the context now of the anti-life equation being involved. That was a big thing. I felt that was good.
I don't think that it's totally unnecessary. I don't think it's wholly unnecessary, the fetch quest. But I feel like in an ideal world, if this had been a miniseries or if this had been sort of a series of films, that could have been explained separately from this team up film. It drags a bit of the kind of the spectacle of it out of it for me.
I mean, I just, that is the plot though. That's the reason he's there. I don't see how you get rid of that or shuffle it off to the side without losing something major. No,
I'm not saying get rid of it, but I don't know. I mean, if they planned it out better, they could have done it in either another film, or I don't know. They could have I feel like they could have handled it better rather than just kind of making the whole, like Massimo was saying earlier, that's what makes the first half of this film inferior, because it's all about that, and it's like, right, I felt like you were having to watch that to get to the good stuff. You were having to eat the fat to get to the meat. I felt like with that kind of stuff.
I happen to like the fat on steaks.
Me too. That's my favourite
creature.
Bit.
You're both creatures.
It's more like you had to eat your vegetables to get to the dessert.
I eat the fat and give the meat to the dog.
I like veggies.
I like dessert.
I like all of the above.
Yeah.
I like food.
We should get dinner.
This is getting off topic.
Yeah, we should. I'm hungry.
Gosh, that's kind of the thing is, once we're at this point and everyone's kind of all together, the rest of this movie does kind of go at a breakneck pace.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of the bit where they have Victor come in and they explain that where the mother box came from.
Right.
Makes a lot more sense that it was found by the Nazis.
Yeah.
It's always Nazis.
I feel like that's I think that's one of the things that's very cohesive about the whole thing in total, is that you can keep track of the mother box. You know what it is. Like the first one, it's all over the place. The original cut, it's all over the place as to who has it and what's going on with it.
Okay. Ancient human kings, right? Their best idea was to just bury the box in some dirt.
I mean...
Oh my god, that scene... Oh my god.
Alan, we skip over that actually. We just skipped over the whole battle scene.
What was the problem?
I mean, it's the only difference between that and the 2017 version is it's Lil Darkseid instead of Steppenwolf.
And we get a Green Lantern ring fly off.
It was very
that was
300.
In the 2017 version, it was just quicker.
Yeah, I remember that, yeah.
But
burying it in a shallow grave, do you know what I mean? If they've not seen a Danny Boyle film, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I mean, they're ancient kings, Alan, so I feel like you can forgive them this time.
Yeah,
there's no excuse for not seeing Shallow Grave.
Oh yeah, fair enough.
No, they were very short-term thinking there, and also Shallow Grave is great, but.
I was gonna say, I think the issue with that was that it's like all the cultures decided to do it their way.
Yeah.
The Amazonians built this amazing, beautiful structure and put it in there, and then kept it in blocked in there in a tomb.
The Atlanteans put it deep underwater, and man was like,
"Yeah, we'll put it in a hole. No one will find it."
Dirt. This is what my dog does, and it seems to work.
Right, I know what the Atlanteans are doing, and we know what the Amazons are doing. Can you guys want to sat this off and go pillage some villages? Just stick it home.
Oh man. At this point, we kind of rocket through to they talk about, you know, the mother box is a change machine, it changes matter, and they decide, well, maybe it can bring Superman back to life, which is a different vibe in the 2017 version. Bruce Wayne is like, we gotta bring him back to life, and Diana's like, no, what's wrong with you?
Well, Alfred serves that role though. Alfred serves that role in the film where he's like, yeah, you probably bad idea to mess with this technology.
Yeah.
And Bruce is like,
And then rolls his eyes and drinks a gin and says something snidey under his breath.
I don't think he does that as much as you think he does.
I think you really just hate this film so much that everything's blown out of proportion, Alan, I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, probably.
You know what I did think was kind of a funny scene that didn't need to be in the film, but I sort of enjoyed it anyways. Alfred teaching Diana how to make tea.
I actually argue that was important because that's when we see how Batman isn't useless in the fight against Superman, because we see he has energy gauntlets, which means he doesn't get completely vaporized.
I mean, yes, the scene as a whole was important. I mean, just specifically the tea part.
It was nice. I liked it.
Yeah.
It was good. Wholesome.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of rocket through to, you know, going to the ship, clearing everyone out.
That's why I say was probably when they have the bit where obviously they're digging up Superman.
Yeah.
It makes sense why the Flash uses super speed, because it's out of respect, which I feel like something I'm glad they kind of emphasise in this film. And then also have that scene with Diana and Arthur, where they realise their characters aren't so different. Which again, lots of exposition and dialogue, but kind of makes their relationship. It removes that stupid lasso of truth scene where Aquaman sits on it.
Yeah.
And that's how those characters come together, because she sees this man, he's actually kind of nice to her.
Yeah.
Whereas this one, it's like, our cultures aren't so different, you and I.
Yeah.
So it's kind of just a better way of dealing with it.
When we just circling back to the scene where they're all together in the hangar or whatever it is, see when Aquaman said to Cyborg, "Do you talk to machines?" Was that a callback to "I heard you talk to fish," or was that reaching?
I mean, I feel like it couldn't have really been, given the sequence of how the film was written and filmed.
Yeah,
I mean, I would say
just felt
Whedon probably stole that line from Snyder and put it with a different character.
Yeah, quite possibly. Yeah, that's
that
more likely.
More like what it was, yeah.
But it did remind me of that. I talk to intelligence.
Yeah. Intelligent, sentient things.
So I mean, we bring Superman back to life. We have.
That was a great scene, by the way.
Yeah, it was. I mean, that was pretty cool. We get Cyborg gets a brief glimpse of the nightmare world.
Yeah.
Which was weird, but okay.
See,
I mean,
sorry, you go.
That's fine. I was all I can say is I feel like they handled the way in which the Flash actually does it. Like, you get to see, obviously foreshadows the end of the film,
right?
Because you see Barry reverse time slightly, which is like, because he explained, like, everything goes a bit wobbly. It's not great, but you see that and it feels a lot better than, because I watched the original scene afterwards, and it's the idea like they just do a countdown,
yeah,
and it just gets dropped.
Although I watched it twice, it flashes by so quickly, that scene with the vision, the nightmare vision that Cyborg has. See when Superman is like cradling the burnt person, is that Batman? Is that a Final Crisis reference? Lane. Oh, it's Lois. Right, okay, because Lois is the key. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And then you see Kilowog in that scene as well.
That's the scene where what would have happened is Lois was in the Batcave, and then Darkseid shows up and kills her, and Batman didn't act quick enough, and so she's dead, and that's why Superman says, "I'm gonna kill the whole world,"
which doesn't really make sense.
I actually thought it was a callback to Final Crisis with Superman cradling Batman after the Darkseid part in that, but yeah,
I could see that.
Yeah, I mean, it could well be, but it could just be they replaced Lois.
Yeah,
instead of Batman.
Also, Henry Cavill's lip looks glorious in this film. Like, that looks so much better.
Lack of stash, of super stash is great.
It's so good.
Yeah, the scene where Superman touches down the memorial and he's not quite there, and they all have to fight him. More or less the same, except for a slight difference in his interaction with Batman. In that
Batman doesn't look like a fool.
We're missing in the actual physical interaction with them. It's all just laser eyes. Superman doesn't say anything, and we don't have that stupid "something's definitely bleeding" line.
Yeah.
I was gonna say I felt like they made Batman look less of a chump
Yeah.
because they gave him the energy gauntlets and was able to deflect everything and actually made him like less stupid. Because in that scene as well, like after that scene, like Batman says, "Oh yeah, I brought Lois along,"
Yeah.
as an insurance policy, which doesn't really make any sense. And in this one, they actually do a nice natural way of doing it, where she's just out to get coffee, and it's the last time she's visiting his grave.
Right.
And then and it makes more sense overall.
Yeah.
I was
and-
surprised that the "you should probably move" line was still in there. That's such a
Right.
bad line. When
my
Cyborg
God.
stops the truck, and "you should probably move." Oh, I hate that line. And the fact that he kept that, I was like,
Yes.
oh no,
Yeah, it wasn't great.
horrible.
The other
writing.
thing, immediately after when he takes Lois and they go back to the farm, first of all, another set of scenes that I just don't care about. But
It's the only thing that was.
a big difference in line reads is when they're standing in the cornfield, instead of "you smell good, did I not before," it's "you spoke," and he said, "did I not before?" And I figured out the reason that they changed that line in the Whedon version is that line wouldn't make sense on account of his whole "you didn't let me live, you won't let me die" line when he's fighting Batman. He did speak,
Yeah.
so they can't have that line, so instead they had to replace it with "you smell good."
Yeah.
Great
Which-
like, couldn't they just have cut both lines?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like saying "you smell good" to a guy who's been buried for at least probably what 3, 4 months at this point, maybe 6
Yeah.
at a push.
I
This
think
guy's
they
been
actually give
embalmed.
they give us a specific time frame at some point at the beginning of the movie of how long it's been. I forget how long though. It's been like a couple of months.
Too long for the cops to be smelling good at any rate.
Yeah.
Not long enough for a mullet.
Yeah, clearly.
I don't care about the rest of these scenes. Clark and Lois make googly eyes at each other.
As I said, I feel like the only one of impact is when Ma Kent comes, and he's like, "They need me."
Ma Kent.
That's the only thing that was Ma Kent. That wasn't.
But-
that was
Sorry,
John Jones'
yeah.
guys.
But I did.
Could you imagine?
He flies away and she just has little red eyes.
Sorry.
But I did wonder. I was like, well, what if like Lois brings up the conversation that they had, like, oh, how's your? You were saying about the house, but I had second thoughts. So, like, what if she brought up something for that conversation, and Martha's like,
Right.
What are you talking about?
When did we talk about that? I
Yeah.
didn't tell you about that. I didn't even think about that.
Yes, dear. Yes.
yeah.
Right.
And as I said, that scene would have made so much better if, as I already previously stated, Lois just smacked Superman in the face
Yeah. I would have enjoyed
and
that.
was like, "You're an idiot,
You son of a
but
bitch.
I love you."
And
We have he goes to the Superman ship to get his costume, and we hear a mixture of
Jor-El.
Jonathan and Jor-El talking to him, saying things that actually make sense for them to say instead of, "I don't know, don't save people, who cares?"
This actually kind of fixes, I think, some of the issues that the Man of Steel Superman has
Retroactively.
in some way. Yeah, retroactively.
And then he picks his black suit because Death
No
of
explanation.
Superman,
I wish they maybe explain it as this is like a mourning garb
or even
for like Kryptonians.
if they what they could have done is had him still beat everyone's ass when he comes back to life, but he's not quite full power, and so the black suit is a solar absorption suit.
Yeah.
Black absorbs heat.
Just like we get it's cool, but at the same time it's like
It did look cool.
the black suit looked
it was
amazing.
sick.
Yeah.
I
was
thought
sick.
it looked
was
really
so good.
cool.
Alan, come on,
Yeah, it looked alright.
there we go. Positive. Clip
Tell you
it.
what.
Timestamp.
Clip it. Ian.
You could. I bet you could probably take screenshots from a movie if he'd never seen it before and show it to Alan, and he'd be like, "Yeah, that looks cool," without context.
It's the best we're gonna do.
Yeah. Yeah, without context is
But
yeah, looks nice.
but with context
no one
for Alan
really
is
know about what that film happened. I was like, also, Death of Superman is up there with Dark Knight Returns as being just not good. Like, I don't like it. So shoehorning all this into the second worst film of all time, and now having to deal with it in the worst film of all time.
I will
It's not doing anything
always
for my blood pressure.
I will always continue to disagree with you that The Dark Knight Returns isn't good. However, Death of
I'm
Superman
in the
is
minority,
definitely
I know that.
indicative of the 90s in a big
90s.
way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, Death of Superman's poor.
It's a garbage story.
I feel like the issue with, and not to get too off topic, I feel like the issue with The Dark Knight Returns is less The Dark Knight Returns itself and more the impact it had on the character going forward and how it's been kind of misappropriated in the interpretation.
Yeah.
I mean, my problem was with the actual work. Like, I read that when I was in my 30s. Like, I never read it as a teenager or whatever. Like, I read The Dark Knight Returns in my 30s and I was just like, what is this? Absolute bullshit. Like, I just was not feeling it whatsoever, and I will never feel it because it's just not for me. But yeah, it really infected Batman for the next forever. Like,
Yeah.
every interpretation now has to be Batman is just an insufferable dick.
Yeah. It's a lot of interpretations going forward are definitely colored by that. This one included.
Yeah.
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 Batman was
I gonna say
definitely
on the-
less of a dick in this movie
Yeah.
overall.
Less, yeah, definitely less.
He didn't.
It felt
It's not hard,
more.
though. Like,
He felt more like a Batman you would see in the comics, where he has the occasional witty remark.
He technically
That no
didn't
one
kill
expects.
anyone aside from one parademon.
But it felt, yeah, I noticed that, but it felt more like an actual follow-on from the version that we saw in BvS, as opposed to what the 2017 cut did. That felt so
definitely.
disconnected from the character that we'd just seen murdering 20-odd guys with a Batmobile to then, like, the something's definitely bleeding line. Like, that felt so far apart, whereas this felt a bit more, although you're saying that he's not as much of a dark murderer, he is still closer to that version than what we got for Justice League.
I mean, the 2017 version of the film obviously went out of its way to distance itself from BvS as much as possible due to the WB mandate and the poor reaction that BvS had. So that was by design, for sure.
Are we at the scene with the last mother box with Silas yet? Because I liked that scene.
Right, so Steppenwolf shows up after Superman gets resurrected and goes to take the last mother box. Silas squirrels it away into a little glass box, turns on a laser, and disintegrates himself.
It looked phenomenal though, that scene. That was probably my favourite visual of the whole film. I mean, we've kind of seen it before in Watchmen with Dr. Manhattan. It very much reminded me of that effect. But it looks
pretty neat.
It looks awesome, yeah.
I was gonna say, like, the idea of Victor, like, actually being like a character that has emotional weight. Like, when his father dies, I felt like that was a really kind of nice, not nice, but like a really good piece of character development.
It was
'cause, like,
important.
he now has something, he kind of realizes the scope of what's happening.
Yeah. And that's something we didn't get in the 2017 version. We never get that death scene.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which, because he survives the whole film, and at the end you get that weird, like, nice reunion thing, even though it's not really earned, because, as you said, half of the stuff that would have made that reunion earned isn't in the film.
Right.
Yeah.
And then
it's
it turns...
kind of one of the most, or it's the most overused superhero trope, though, right? Is somebody dies and that's what makes
absolutely.
somebody realise.
Yeah, 100%, yeah.
Can you imagine, though, if that is how you learned all your lessons? Like, you'd have nobody left.
I'd have no friends
I
left.
hated the fact that Silas had to die. I mean, like, I don't have any friends anyway, obviously, but I hated the fact
Certainly
that
don't
Silas
after
died.
this podcast.
And it was just... Yeah, well, fucking... That's why I'm in disguise. But it was just... Again, just like, oh, this guy has to die so that this guy learns a lesson. It's just like, how many times?
We're
And
gonna
I'm not
purge
talking about in
everyone!
general. I'm talking about in these films. Yeah, in these films, it's just like, fucking,
To-
please stop.
To be fair though, that is more of a storytelling trope in general. I don't think you can just direct that at superhero films. That goes back.
Oh.
That goes back to the Bible, like the prodigal son story. Is that?
Yeah.
Like, this has been used in stories for years.
My problem is not with it being happening. My problem is not with it happening. Like, it happens all the time. It's a trope. And it's a trope that's usually used to good effect. But it's just like...
It's in this movie, so it's bad.
I'm sick of it. Yeah, well, that is part of it as well, yeah. I just hated the whole scene. Like, I'm watching it and I'm going, oh, good. Another person close to the hero has to die so that he becomes less of an insufferable dick. Like, just... Everybody in this film is super dark and super edgy, and it was just like...
I mean,
I didn't feel like this
everyone in
film was that
needs-
miserable, especially compared to
Yeah.
its two forebears.
Yeah.
just the guy's dad dying so that he becomes the hero.
Aside from
once again,
when we get to the end, that part's a little miserable.
This was 4
honestly,
hours
the
of
rest of
hell
this,
for
I
me,
feel
which
like
I think you're probably getting.
Yeah, no, I think we get that impression. The rest of this, most of the rest of this, I think we can kind of rush through. I mean, you have your big final battle with Steppenwolf. They have to separate the mother boxes. Superman shows up at the nick of time, has the much relatively better line instead of, "I'm a big fan of truth and justice."
I feel like him coming in and stopping the axe was great.
Yeah, the stopping the action, just being like, "I'm not impressed."
Did you all miss the Russian family though?
Oh,
No.
such an important plot element. That was missing.
Dostoevsky. No, I didn't miss that.
Honestly.
Nah, it was a
Do
much
you know
better
what
thing.
sucked? And this isn't the film's fault, technically. See, after seeing... I didn't love Aquaman, by the way, right? But see, after seeing the suit in Aquaman, the gold top and the green pants, and how well Jason Momoa pulled that off, see, seeing him back in his kind of crappy brown suit, it was like, oh, this doesn't look as nice. I mean, that's not the film's fault, but it just bothered me.
You know what occurred to me a lot in that film? They suit up really fast. You have scenes where they're like in their civvy clothes going somewhere, and then next scene they're all in their costumes. Like when they're going to the Superman ship to resurrect Superman, you've got Barry talking to Arthur when he's trying on hats, and Arthur's like wearing a coat and jeans, and then they drive into the area and he's in his full armor. Where'd he get changed?
Telephone box?
He's a fish man.
Or the other thing is they all ride. So Victor fixes the troop carrier, right? So it can fly, and they all fly to Russia to meet Steppenwolf. I like to think about what that plane ride was like, right?
So like,
Because even on the fastest air travel, that's still like a 10-hour flight.
Yeah.
Just a lot of naps, I think.
I mean, like the idea is like, okay, we're gonna stop him now, and just like, okay.
All of them sitting in the plane,
Wake
just
me up.
Yeah.
That's its own spin-off comic.
Yeah, just like what happened on the ship.
What happens in the ship stays on the ship.
So bats, right? Where'd that come from?
Yeah, I mean, it's a weird thing. As I said, like another bit that could have been cut out or even kind of trimmed down is like some of that battle sequence.
I mean,
like it is good. I enjoyed. For me, I have some really great opinions. I really enjoyed the latter half of it, and especially when Barry reverses time, because it just gave me pure CW Flash vibes, and I just always think it was "Run, Barry!"
Yes,
run!
I literally said those words during that scene.
Holy shit.
While I don't entirely agree with Alan's assessment that whole sequence is boring, I do think it was a little overdrawn.
Somewhat.
Again, though, I'm glad they actually give Barry something to do. He's the linchpin of that whole plan succeeding, unlike in the 2017 version where they just, I don't know, go save that family over there. Whatever, we don't need you.
Yeah.
Yeah, because obviously that lack of family, small Russian family, basically means that there's the whole scene that you miss out where it's Flash and Superman racing to save people.
Yeah. Which you don't really need.
Yeah, you don't.
Remind me again, how did Steppenwolf die in the 2017 cut? How did that actually kill him?
I don't think he
doesn't.
dies.
No.
He gets put back through the portal.
Yeah.
He gets sent back to Steppenwolf because the idea is like, okay, we're the defenders of Earth or defenders of whatever. And like we're here, the Justice League is here, and Superman.
Right.
Yeah.
But I really like the fact where like Cyber was like, oh, it's too late. And then you just see Barry racing through and like saying the words he's filed. I thought it was nice. It's very much, he said, it's making the Flash important again. And also Wonder Woman decapitates Stephen is so good.
That was metal.
It was satisfying.
It was
definitive,
it was
I
great.
guess.
It was definitive. It's the idea that this character won't come back, and it makes sense because people who complain about Wonder Woman killing people haven't picked up a Wonder Woman comic,
Right.
at any point, because she is an Amazonian, she's a warrior. Unlike Batman and Superman, she has no kill rule.
She's got a sword, dog.
She has a sword and a shield.
It's not decorative. we get rid of Steppenwolf. Steppenwolf is beheaded. His head is squished by Darkseid. Darkseid has his final do-it-myself moment, which that felt very inspired by that exact Thanos scene. We'll use the old ways, which I assume means they're going to get in a goddamn spaceship. Except for that'll never happen because we're never going to see a sequel to this film. Anyways, and then we get the Lord of the Rings Return of the King style 5 friggin' endings.
Yes, yeah.
That movie ends, and then it ends, and then it ends some more. And then we get the real epilogue, which is the nightmare sequence of the film, wherein we get, really most notably, the return of Jared Leto as the Joker.
Was it just me that felt this was so tacked on?
It absolutely was.
Yeah,
it was awful.
Like
100%.
I felt like some of it would have been good if he wasn't there, in my opinion, and that's because I hate that Jared Leto Joker.
I didn't
character,
mind
even
him.
though I'm not actually.
I liked him a lot more than he was in Suicide Squad. I'll say that.
The whole movie, I'm going like, we've not had this scene yet. Sure, they're not just going to tackle it at the end. Oh no, they've tacked on it at the end. Right, okay.
Yeah. It wouldn't make sense to have that scene in the middle of Cyborg's Vengeance, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Would you been a better place to have it?
Yeah, it would have worked better.
That's where I thought it was going to be. Multiple times in that film, I thought I was like, oh, we're going to do that now. And then I was like, oh, I guess not.
I mean, seeing Flash in that scene somewhat kind of justifies the Barry Allen flashback for BvS, but I mean, it only took them half a decade.
Exactly, to have a payoff.
Yeah, I don't know, and I just felt so tacked on. I was looking forward to that scene. I was like, oh, I quite like the idea of the nightmare, and then I was like, oh, this is lazy.
I thought there'd be a full half an hour that we'd have in a nightmare. I thought there would be like a full half an hour of this 4-hour movie dedicated to that particular bit, because you think they've got 4 hours of film.
Yeah.
Surely, a significant portion of it is going to be this scene that people have hyped up. And
nope.
No.
Nah.
I think the Legion of Doom thing makes more sense.
So,
because like the original version of it, Lex Luthor says, "Oh, let's have a little bit of injustice of our own," or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Thereabouts, and it felt a bit
this one
kind of writing.
This one still kind of alludes to that, but it was clearly more of a setup for the solo Batfleck movie that'll never happen.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff that's in here that will never pay off because, as Dan said, half a decade ago at this point.
I did feel is this the first time that we've seen Arkham Asylum in this universe? But other than did we see it in Suicide Squad? But I thought that the version of Arkham actually looked quite cool. I didn't mind that.
Yeah,
it was the fact that they changed the name. It was Arkham
House for the Emotionally Troubled.
House for the Emotionally Troubled. That's what it was. Home for the Emotionally Troubled. Yeah. Actually, I felt like I guess being sensitive and stuff like that, and kind of makes sense rather than it be called Arkham Asylum, and it being a dingy old building.
Still kind of a dingy old building.
Old-fashioned way.
Yeah. No lobotomies here.
Looking through the
don't bring up lobotomies and Zack Snyder. Come on, like. Just takes me back
I mean, have you seen Sucker Punch? The entire movie is about a lobotomy.
At least he learned his lesson this time.
It's literally the plot. The crux of the
lobotomy.
plot of Sucker Punch is a lobotomy.
Okay.
Spoilers, but don't watch it if you haven't seen it.
Don't watch it at all. I would argue that Sucker Punch is worse than this movie.
Oh yeah. Oh totally.
Yeah. Definitely. The original cut of this film as well.
Nope.
It's okay to be wrong.
4 hours.
Yeah, so just
It drove me insane.
circling back to the sort of fan consensus on what folk were saying in the Facebook page, I think folk will be sort of satisfied. I mean, a lot of people, like Ben Townsend, that's one of the guys that I've been on this podcast before, he commented saying that he wasn't clamouring for it, but he's going to watch it with his expectations set low. And a lot of folk could be saying things like that, like, I'm torn on that, I wasn't really wanting it, but it's here. I don't feel like people in that sense are going to be disappointed. It didn't seem like there wasn't the same hype train, and there wasn't the same amount riding on this than there was on the original Justice League or Batman v Superman. So I feel like already it's at an advantage in terms of fan reception going in.
I think I've seen one fan that will be disappointed because Willie Russell says that Batman has a Greg's loyalty card, and we were all waiting for it, and he should add like a Bat card style Greg's loyalty card. It would be great. I feel like the Bat
credit card. I've seen it before.
Don't eat Bat. That's how we all got here, like a year ago. So don't eat Bat. Actually, we should disclaimer that.
put like big red letters. Do you know what? I would say, for me, the original Justice League was a 4 out of 10 film. This is probably like a 6. Maybe a 7. If I never have
I'm
to
sitting
watch
at
it
7.
I liked it a lot the first time I watched through it. I still like it. I'm not as enamored with it as I was after watching it a couple more times to give it some clarity and some subsequent watch throughs. So yeah, I'd probably put it like a 7. I'd say if you don't like Zack Snyder's movies, you're not gonna like this movie.
Yeah, without doubt.
What?
If you're all right with movies that look cool, fine. But I would definitely say maybe it's worth waiting around to see if someone makes a shorter version of it.
Yeah.
To be honest,
I said I cannot help say this enough, and we've all said it, is that this film could have been 2.5 hours and satisfied just as many fans.
Absolutely, and not lost that much of the plot.
And it also could have had
Had
a
it
massive
been-
audience appeal as well.
Had it been 2.5 hours, I don't think I would think it's the worst film that's ever made. But because it was 4 hours long, I was just like,
It was
"Fuck
indulgent.
you, this is 0.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a bits that could have been cut that without the CGI, without the kind of finished CGI, that would have made the film probably more streamlined and kind of a better experience. Because I thought it was really jarring whenever something with a terrible CG cut came in, and I felt like, come on,
Yeah.
you could have cut that out.
Yeah.
I know this idea is restoring Zack Snyder's original vision, but
Yeah, my takeaway is there's always a fine line between letting an auteur realise his vision and reining somebody in that's being too self-indulgent, and I feel like this errs on that side of the fence. My overall notes, I love the score. I don't know why it had to be rated R, to be honest. Like the swearing was
It's because they say
unnecessary.
fuck like 6 times.
But
Yeah,
it didn't. But it didn't add anything. I didn't feel like. I mean, I'm going to
felt
talk
like-
about unnecessary swearing, but I just didn't feel like it added anything.
especially the bit at the end with Batman, like I felt like that was completely unnecessary when he said that. You could easily have got the line
Yeah.
across without the
Yeah.
F-bomb.
They still
Yeah.
love a blue beam of light. Every superhero film has to have a blue beam of light. So
Yeah.
every time Steppenwolf appeared,
That's it.
like everything did feel more grand, and the stakes felt higher than Whedon's cut. There was more new scenes than I was anticipating. I don't know about yours.
Yeah, definitely.
The majority of the fighting was people just getting thrown about. Like that's how I felt. After the second time I watched it, I was like, everybody just gets thrown into pillars and thrown out of buildings, and everybody just get tossed about the whole time. Like,
Reminds me of Injustice.
Yeah.
It's like a fight.
but I mean, all that said, I'm at about 7. So, Alan, what's your rating?
0.
negative
Honestly,
1,000.
0, yeah. Yeah, 0. I think it's the worst thing I've ever seen. And to be clear, like when you mentioned it there, it kind of made me say that I should probably say this. I love like letting an auteur do something when they've got something to say and like a vision of something which I think is good. Like David Lynch, I can't get enough of. Like I'm not saying I love all of his stuff because some of it is just a little bit too much, right? But I love David Lynch's stuff. It's got something to say, even if you don't understand it. It's like you know he's got something to say. This to me was all sizzle, no steak. If we're going to go back to the food analogy from earlier, and absolutely despise it. Like I'm actually angry that I watched it.
I would
think it's
say,
terrible.
along the ideas of you, Alan, when you talk about R2s and filmmaking, I feel like if you're looking for a real superhero film that has the original director's vision, for the film, I would suggest looking at Richard Donner's cut of Superman 2.
Yeah.
Because that is the perfect example of how you do a director's cut while not completely boring people to death by making it super long. And
I've never
it's,
actually seen that, so
it's fantastic.
I
It's
think I
great.
will
It
check
makes
out.
yeah.
It's definitely
honestly,
it's super worth watching.
Yeah,
I'm not a fan.
It's the version that I actually am most familiar with.
I'm not a fan of any of the
Uh,
Superman films. I hate those films.
I mean, yeah. I mean, you know,
I
I'm
don't
wearing
love them either.
a
Yeah,
t-shirt on, so.
I was never a fan of Chris Reeves films. I always just thought they were super naff. But
But yeah. Well,
I
if
like
you're gonna
them
watch
okay,
it, you know,
like-
yeah. I think Richard Donner cut is
But
definitely
I've-
worth a watch, though.
yeah, I'll definitely check it out. Like I will do that. Keep
I mean-
meaning to.
I mean, Alan's going to watch that before he's going to watch this again. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, it's so true.
Well, I will never watch this film again. Like, I will never watch
Would-
this film again. Like, I hate it that
Would
much.
you have watched it if not for this podcast? No.
No.
Okay.
Well, it just about sums that up, doesn't it?
There we go.
So it seems like we have
What's your rating?
the general consensus in 3 of the 4 here is it's all right. It's better than the 2017 version, and then the outline consensus, which is why I really wanted Alan here, is it's complete dog shit. It's the worst thing to ever walk the earth. It's the spawn of Satan itself. This film was cast from hell onto the mortal plane, brought here to torment us.
Specifically, Alan.
More or less.
I think I heard his veins actually bursting throughout this conversation. I hope he doesn't.
You might have to go into hiding after this, man.
I hope he doesn't have an
Right.
aneurysm.
But surely for you, Alan, this must have been exactly what you thought it was going to be going in. I mean, would
Yeah, only worse.
it's exceeded your expectations? Then that's good.
Bravo, Mr. Snyder. Bravo.
Well done.
You did the impossible.
Alan is.
Good
is
lord. I don't think I have anything else to say about this fucking movie.
Well, with that being said,
Let it die. Let it die.
check. With that being said, check us out on social media at BGCP on Facebook. We also go by BGCP on Twitter as well, and we have the big Glasgow comic page website where you can find all the latest news, reviews, and comic book news.
And I
Do
will
you hear this
put
guy? Do you hear this guy trying to steal my bit?
I'll put all the reviews in the description for like Man of Steel and Batman v Superman and all the stuff we talked about.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and I'm writing up. I'm writing up a review for Justice League right now, which actually I think this discussion is going to help me clarify a lot of stuff for that review. I'd love to see Alan write a review just to juxtapose mine. I'm
Yeah,
pretty sure
totally.
it'll just be shit
You should have-
in big Arial bold,
Alan-
like 72 font.
Please do your BVS piece
just
as
have-
well. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. Yeah. So you should have at the end, tack it on, and have like Alan have a paragraph at the end that is just.
Yes.
And then enormous
Th-
amount of
that's what-
swears in different languages.
Obviously, this will be done from my witness protection home, like
Yeah.
because
The whole-
I can-
So anyway, we'll be back next week with your standard podcast where we'll have, the review roundup and all the things we normally do. I'm pretty sure next week we will probably go over a little bit of Falcon and Winter Soldier as well.
Probably do a double episode special.
Yeah, we didn't really have
the
time
first
for
two
that this
episodes.
week. And otherwise, thanks for hanging out and listening to us babble about the Zack Snyder cut of the Justice League for however long this ends up being. And we'll see you all next week.
Take care.
Bye.
Take care, guys. Bye.